What's going on, folks? Adrian here. Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about Bless Unleashed, which wrapped up its PC closed beta test on Steam this past week, and I managed to jump in for a little bit. So I'm going to share some brief thoughts about my experience and what I've seen, focusing on a few elements and ignoring the basics. Oh, and fair warning, you'll hear me bring up Bless Online a lot because that's what I'm going to be comparing some of the stuff to, because I think most of us that did play that game are wondering why we should care about another installment this time around. So with that in mind, let's go through these 5 points. Number 1, gameplay. So let's kick things off with the combat system. Bless Unleashed is all-action combat, retaining its vision of a combo-driven action system for all its classes, and this time it actually works. It's a big departure from Bless Online's whatever system that was, and in Unleashed, developers Round 8 Studios has trimmed the fluff, removing tab targeting and traditional MMO hotbars. Every class will get a couple of unique abilities hotkeyed to X and C, and you'll also have access to a subset of skills from a tree that lets you pick 4 skills mapped on the numpad 1 through 4. Now the bulk of the work comes from your main attacks, left and right mouse buttons, which starts the combo chain, often requiring 3 to 5 more inputs of varying options to reach the powerful finishing attack, which could be single target or AoE depending on your class. In short, the pacing is good, it feels weighted, and it looks so much better, especially when you're up against boss monsters, which by the way I do suspect is the main theme of the game's design. When you lock onto a boss and engage it in combat, it felt more like a single-player RPG than an MMO. So the gameplay has definitely picked up, helped by the Unreal Engine 4 and better animations of course, but there are some complaints from me. Firstly, moving your character around in the open world feels kinda stiff, with jumping and dodging especially. It felt like I was playing a Dragon Age Inquisition type game on the Frostbite engine for some reason. And secondly, the camera work is something I am not a fan of, because you can't zoom in or out, and in a tight spot with a really large boss fight going on, being stuck with one perspective sucks. So I hope the game changes that before launch. In other areas of the game that I've experienced, there are some noticeable gameplay additions. For example, the addition of campfires spread out on the open world maps that serves as a preparation hub where you can craft and share food with your party, dismantle gear, change your class skill trees, and heal up before a big fight. Elsewhere, when players are defeated, they don't die immediately, and you can heal them up to full health again a la Guild Wars 2. There's also a quick instant map travel port system now, which means no more flying around using stable flight masters, so you can see the direction that Unleashed wants to go with this. Number 2, content. While many elements of the game look different from the outside, fundamentally at its core, Bless Unleashed is still a typical South Korean MMO that offers the same theme park rides that you'd expect it to. For the main content, you still have your main story quests and side quests, streamlined now for efficient hub crawls. For what it's worth, the story is still bland IMO, but it doesn't suffer from the poor translations or voiceovers that Bless Online did. There are new additions too, like dynamic daily open world content in the form of boss monster hunts, which are fun and good for gear, but otherwise nothing special that raises the bar. So the closed beta test allowed you to level up your characters to 24, which meant we did get to see some dungeon gameplay. I never got a pop for an abyssal dungeon run, but the trials that I did were interesting. It's just you, another party member, and the final boss with your mechanics. There's no clutter in between. That really allowed the combat system to shine, and the developers' influence from working on the Monster Hunter franchise did come through a little. Your party will then be scored at the end of the run based on time completion, and you'll be awarded loot based on that. Now speaking of, loot itemization and gear progression in Unleashed is somewhat more simplified. Your gear score matters as you level of course, so in the UI it's clean and simple to see the gear score of an item, its rarity, effects, and if it's an upgrade or not, which helps you know what to keep or dismantle at a glance. Gear enchanting and all that wonderful stuff comes in much later in the game, so there's no need to worry about that in the CBT, for me at least. The crafting is pretty straightforward too. Right from the get-go, you can start harvesting ore, wood, and herbs on the open world maps, so there's no need for tools. These can be taken back to the main city where all the crafting stations are located at, so processing them there will increase your profession ranks, which in return unlocks higher quality recipes to craft. Unlike in Bless Online, I noticed that Unleashed wants you to get started on some of these systems early on because consumable food and potions are super handy to have, due to the game's increased difficulty if you're even slightly undergeared, outnumbered, or don't know your class skills and combos well enough. It can be punishing, which is oddly refreshing. Okay, let's talk about presentation and the aesthetics. So running on Unreal Engine 4, Bless Unleashed's visuals and performance are steps ahead of its predecessor, which is stating the obvious. It's a different game. With all-around better graphics, voice acting, and in-game cutscenes, there was nothing sticking out like a sore thumb, and I was actively looking for the usual suspects like jarring texture pop-ins. But Bless Unleashed passed that test at least. The nature of its combat system requires the game to go all out with its flashy combat animations, and there are no complaints here. It looks decent except for the few niggling annoyances with control and camera work. Now, the user interface and tooltips are perhaps the biggest change, with Round 8 Studios opting for a more visually pleasing aesthetic, as its tooltips, tutorial snippets, and even map interactability feel and look fresh, akin to something you'll see in a popular RPG, all marking a shift toward the modern and trendy visually, although functionality suffers, which we'll talk about in the next section. So we go to point number 4, and look, most MMOs make their way to the console from the PC, not the other way around. Bless Unleashed launched on the Xbox One back in March this year, and the Steam closed beta test is a console port, make no mistake about it. The test did allow for full controller support, which felt very native in comparison to mouse and keyboard, which felt awkward as hell, with the main reason being the UI design and functionality, which again was built for consoles and controller key mapping. It took me quite some time to get used to mouse and keyboard, as elements in the UI and menu pages that by logic should be clickable by mouse require a button press instead, which is very console-like and rarely found in any other PC MMOs. This isn't really a big deal after a while, but it is something to think about. And to the obvious point is that in the future after launch, Bless Unleashed on the PC will obviously be behind its console version in terms of content. But do take note, there are multiple updates that already exist, so depending on the release schedule, it may take several months before the PC version catches up to the console content-wise. As it stands, Round 8 Studios will continue to develop new content for the console first, and it's unclear if that will change in the future. And to the last point, it's unlikely that Bless Unleashed will ever escape the comparisons with Bless Online. So based on what we've already discussed, is Unleashed objectively better? Well, in most areas of the game, it would appear so, as Unleashed offers more upgrades in the gameplay and visual departments alongside new modern features for a free-to-play MMO than Bless Online did at its early access launch 2 years ago, and that was the buy-to-play game. We went from paying for this to getting this for free, although one can argue that we did technically fund Bless Unleashed. For the many PC players who needed to hear that Bless Unleashed is miles ahead after getting burned by Bless Online, look, it's very understandable to be hopeful or still skeptical, as there's so much more we won't see until its full PC launch on Steam in 2021. I myself am still on the fence and will reserve full judgment until after launch, but for the moment I can see the improvements, and I do acknowledge the effort of Jason Park and the team he leads at Round 8 Studios, who are desperately trying to learn from the past to carve out a future for the Bless IP, and I wish them all the best. It's a long, hard road ahead to win over a very tough PC MMORPG crowd. So to wrap this video up, if you've had the chance to check out the PC closed beta test for Bless Unleashed, or if you've been playing the console version, hey, feel free to jump in and share your thoughts and experiences about the game so far in the comments section below. Do you like it? Do you not? And who's going to be playing it at launch next year? Let me know. And guys, I'm also aware that these are just early observations on my part because I didn't get to spend a whole lot of time in the CBT, but rest assured I will be back to report on more if there's an open beta before launch. In the meantime, hit the like button for the love of MMOs, and if you're new here, do subscribe to the channel for more MMO news, previews, reviews, and all that good stuff. Once again, I'm Adrian, and I thank you for watching.